The rain was pouring heavily, leaving the streets of New York empty and shrouded in a dense fog. The drops hit the ground with force, while the lights reflected the wet sheen of the asphalt. Inside the rescue van, Lisa felt her stomach churn with every turn. She had always known it would be a tough night, but nothing could have prepared her for what she was about to find. Next to her, the other volunteers had already received numerous calls that night, but the urgent tone of the last one made her heart race. When they arrived at the indicated alley, something felt different. The streetlights flickered, casting only partial illumination on the scene. Lisa stepped out of the van, feeling the night's humidity seep into her clothes. In front of her, something small was huddled in the darkness. A faint sound, almost imperceptible, reached her ears, a sort of whimper. She approached slowly, and then she saw it. The tiny dog was motionless, pressed against the wall of weathered bricks. Its frail body was wet and dirty, its fur matted, its eyes half-closed and dull. It looked more like a ghost than a living creature. Lisa knelt down without hesitation, extending her hand cautiously. The dog met her gaze for a brief moment, and she saw something profound there, a mix of resignation and pain. Its eyes, dull and hopeless, seemed to say it had already given up on everything. "Hey, little one, you're safe now, okay?" Lisa said softly, her voice choked with emotion. She wrapped a blanket around the fragile body of the dog, which didn't even flinch. Bella, as they decided to name her, was on the brink of death. Lisa knew that. Each breath the dog took was labored, as if she was struggling for every gasp of air. When Lisa cradled her in her arms, she felt Bella's warmth, but it was not the warmth of life, it was feverish heat. The alarm bells rang in her mind. Inside the van, the silence was heavy, broken only by the sound of the rain. On the way to the clinic, Lisa couldn't take her eyes off Bella. With every bump in the road, she held the dog tighter, fearing that this might be the last moment she would hold her. Bella's breathing grew weaker with each passing second. The knot in Lisa's throat tightened, and she wondered how such a small being could have survived for so long in such a condition. When they arrived at Brightpaw Animal Clinic, the team was already prepared. Dr. Wilson, an experienced veterinarian, quickly assessed the dog in her arms. Lisa saw his expression change, hardening. They didn't need words to know that the situation was serious. The team took Bella inside, while Lisa remained frozen at the door, watching them disappear down the clinic's corridors. Each second felt like an eternity. She barely knew Bella, but already felt deeply connected to that small creature fighting for life. Minutes later, Dr. Wilson returned with a serious look on his face. "She's stable for now, but the next few days are critical," he said, his expression weary. "We managed to control the fever, and her creatinine levels have started to drop, but her kidneys are still very delicate." A small wave of relief washed over Lisa, but she knew the battle was far from over. Still, there was hope. The treatment was working, at least for now. Her gaze met Dr. Wilson's, and they both understood what that moment meant. The next step would be a long and difficult recovery, if there was to be one at all. The following days were an emotional roller coaster. With each visit to the clinic, Lisa felt her heart tightening with uncertainty. Bella's progress was slow but noticeable. There were moments when the dog seemed to improve, able to lift her head and open her eyes for longer periods, but soon after, she would fall back again. Every small victory was met with relief from the team, but the tension lingered in the air, like a shadow that wouldn't let them forget the fragility of the situation. During one of her visits, Lisa sat beside Bella, watching as the dog breathed slowly, her tiny lungs struggling with each movement. The sound of the heart monitor filled the silence of the room, marking the irregular rhythm of a life that still resisted. Lisa stroked Bella's dirty, matted fur, trying to find comfort in the simplicity of that gesture. Then Bella did something that surprised everyone. With an effort that seemed impossible for such a frail body, she lifted her head and looked directly at Lisa. Her eyes, once dull and distant, now sparkled with something different. There was life there, a small, undeniable flame. Lisa felt a lump in her throat. She could hardly believe what she was seeing. "You can hear me, right?" she said, her voice choked, almost a whisper. Bella didn't move, but her fixed gaze on Lisa seemed a sufficient answer. That silent connection was like a shock of emotion to Lisa. It was as if the little dog was fighting not just for herself, but for the one who believed in her when everyone else had given up. A bond was being formed, one that transcended any rational explanation. When Dr. Wilson entered the room, he was taken aback. The progress was remarkable, more than anyone had expected. Bella's creatinine levels were finally dropping significantly, and although there was still a long way to go, that alone was a miracle. "She's responding well, better than I anticipated. We're still far from a full recovery, but there's hope," he said cautiously, though clearly surprised. Lisa allowed herself a smile, a small relief, but she knew this was not the end of the fight. Bella's battle against time and her own body was just beginning, and somehow Lisa was also waging her own emotional battle. She felt more involved than she should. She knew that. She had rescued other animals before, had cried for many, but nothing compared to what she felt for Bella. As the days passed, Bella began to get up on her own. At first it was just a weak movement of her paws, but soon she managed to stand, wobbling. The clinic staff was moved by each small progress, and Lisa was always there, watching closely, encouraging the little dog to keep going. It was during one of those visits that something changed. Bella, now stronger, started to follow Lisa around the room. With each step Lisa took, the little dog tried to move in the same direction. First she stumbled, but then with more steadiness. She wouldn't leave Lisa's side, as if she knew that the presence of that human was what kept her alive. "She's getting attached to you, Lisa. I've never seen this happen so quickly with a dog in this condition," Dr. Wilson commented, watching the scene with a mix of admiration and surprise. Lisa smiled as she watched Bella closely. The dog looked at her with those intense eyes, as if there was no one else in the world but the two of them. She knew that Bella was fighting not only for survival, but also to stay by her side. It was then that Lisa made the decision that had been growing in her heart. For days, she had been wrestling with this feeling, trying to be rational, but there was no room for doubt anymore. When Bella was fully recovered, and if she made it, Lisa would not let her go. She would adopt Bella and give her the home she had never had. "I'm going to take you home, I promise," Lisa said as she crouched down to pet Bella. The little dog, who seemed to understand every word, laid her head on Lisa's lap and let out a long sigh. It was as if she too had made her decision. However, that calm would soon be interrupted. Days later, while Lisa was helping Bella take her first longer steps around the clinic, something unexpected happened. The little dog, who had been showing signs of constant improvement, suddenly collapsed. Her body, once fragile but resilient, seemed to crumble all at once. The cold floor of the clinic seemed to absorb the impact of her small, weary body. Lisa's heart stopped for a second. The fear she thought she was controlling surged back with full force, crushing her hope. She quickly knelt down, trying to revive Bella, but the little dog didn't respond. Lisa called for help, her voice trembling, unable to control the panic rising within her. Dr. Wilson rushed in, followed by nurses. They lifted Bella carefully, placing her on an examination table. Lisa was paralyzed, her eyes filled with tears. What had gone wrong? She was so close to taking Bella home, so close to giving her a new life. The heart monitor beside the table beeped, the numbers fluctuating erratically. The previously quiet environment filled with rapid commands and tension. Dr. Wilson fought to stabilize the little dog, but Bella was losing strength by the second. "I need her to come back, please," Lisa whispered, gripping what little hope remained. Then, as if the world had paused for a moment, the monitor went flat. The continuous, unbroken sound of the monitor filled the room like a punch to Lisa's chest. Her eyes widened, unable to believe what was happening. Her hands, which had been gripping the edge of the examination table tightly, slowly released as if her body was giving up along with Bella's. Dr. Wilson and the nursing team sprang into immediate action, racing against time. Attempts at resuscitation began, but everything around Lisa seemed to blur. She felt like a powerless spectator in a nightmare that couldn't be interrupted. "No, it can't end like this," Lisa screamed, more to herself than to anyone else. "Doctor." Wilson cast a quick glance in her direction, but his expression remained focused, refusing to be shaken by the despair that overwhelmed the room. Time seemed to stand still. Each passing second felt like a blow to Lisa's heart. She had promised to take Bella home. How could she fail now? The team fought tirelessly, while Lisa silently prayed, pleading for Bella to fight one more time. Her hands trembled as she watched the frantic attempts to save the little dog. Chest compressions continued, the rhythm quickening, and then a sound. A small beep on the monitor. Bella's heart reacted. Lisa stumbled back, her hand covering her mouth. She didn't know whether to allow herself to feel relief or if she was still on the verge of losing Bella forever. The monitor, which had previously displayed a chilling silence, now emitted small, irregular signs of life. The room, once chaotic, slipped into a tense quiet. Doctor Wilson slowed his pace, his eyes fixed on the monitor as he observed Bella's signs stabilizing. "She's back. She's still very weak, but she's back," Dr. Wilson said, his voice deep and weary. Tears streamed down Lisa's face. She could hardly believe it. Her breath, which had been trapped in her chest the entire time, finally escaped, accompanied by silent sobs. She moved closer to the table, watching Bella's small body, which now seemed more fragile than ever. Her battle was far from over. "You're strong, little one. Please keep fighting," Lisa whispered, leaning in close to the dog. Dr. Wilson placed a hand on Lisa's shoulder. "She's in a critical situation. We were lucky this time, but I can't promise this won't happen again. Her body is very weakened, and each crisis brings us closer to complete failure." Those words pierced through Lisa like a knife. She knew Bella was hanging by a thread, but seeing it so close, almost losing her, made fear take over all her thoughts. Yet looking at Bella so frail, she realized it wasn't just fear. It was love, deep and sincere, something she could no longer ignore. Bella wasn't just a temporary rescue. She had already become an irreversible part of Lisa's life. After a while, Bella was moved to an isolated room where she could rest and recover, away from the clinic's chaos. Lisa remained seated beside her, her heart heavy, but with a flicker of hope still burning. She gently stroked Bella's fur, saying nothing. Each time Bella let out a soft sigh, Lisa felt as if a huge weight had been lifted from her shoulders, even if only for a moment. The following days were filled with intensive care. Bella remained under constant observation, and each little improvement was celebrated with caution. Lisa began to visit the clinic more than ever, arriving before opening hours and leaving only when night had fallen. She couldn't bear to leave Bella for more than a few hours, as if something inside her was telling her that her presence was essential for the dog's recovery. One afternoon, while Lisa was sitting in the waiting room, Dr. Wilson approached with an intriguing expression. He held some papers in his hand, looking at Bella in a way that made Lisa brace herself for the worst. "We conducted new tests," he began, hesitantly. "There's something we didn't notice before, an old scar on her body. I thought it was just a mark from some previous accident, but it seems to have more significance than we imagined." Lisa furrowed her brow, confused. "What do you mean by that?" Dr. Wilson sat down beside her, placing the papers on the table. "This scar is from a surgery that appears to have been performed some time ago. Bella was diagnosed with a terminal kidney condition, but there are signs that she was under treatment before being abandoned. Someone cared for her to a certain point and then simply gave up." The revelation hit like a bomb. Lisa felt a wave of indignation rise within her. How could someone abandon Bella knowing her condition, knowing she needed help to survive? It explained the state in which they found her. She had been left to die. "They abandoned her because they knew she was going to die, didn't they?" Lisa asked, her voice hoarse with anger and sadness. "That seems to be the case. I believe that when they realized the treatment would be long and expensive, they decided it wasn't worth it." Lisa took a deep breath, feeling her chest tighten. The image of Bella alone in that alley, soaked and on the brink of death, hit her hard. She now knew the truth. Bella had been rejected by those who were supposed to love her, discarded as if her life had no value. But she wouldn't allow that to happen again. "I will take care of her. I will give her everything she needs. No matter the cost," Lisa said, determination clear in her voice. Dr. Wilson nodded, respecting her decision. "You have a big heart, Lisa, but be aware. It could be a tough battle." She looked at Bella, who was sleeping peacefully, and felt an overwhelming love flood her heart. I know, but it's worth it. She's worth it. With that, a silent decision was made within Lisa. Bella wasn't alone. She would never be alone again. And together, they would face whatever lay ahead, even if the path turned out to be darker than they imagined. The days that followed were a mix of constant hope and fear. Lisa hardly left the clinic, following Bella's treatment, as if the dog's life depended solely on it. Deep down, she knew Bella's fate was beyond her control, but the need to be beside her, to not let her face this alone, drove her to keep going. During each visit, Bella would make an effort to lift her head, as if sensing Lisa's presence before even seeing her, and that brought a comfort Lisa couldn't explain, a connection that seemed to be the only thing keeping them both strong. On a quiet afternoon, after another treatment session, Lisa sat on the floor next to Bella, watching her sleep. The small, weakened body was wrapped in a blanket, and for the first time in a long while, Lisa noticed a look of peace on her face. She found herself thinking about how that little creature had transformed her life in a way she hadn't expected. Bella had been discarded, abandoned by those who were supposed to love her, but she still fought, even when the world seemed to have given up on her. The thought of losing Bella invaded Lisa's mind frequently, but she always pushed that fear away. However, that afternoon, as she watched the little dog lying there, something within her changed. She knew she could no longer ignore what was to come. Bella's body was still fragile, and each small improvement was followed by a new complication. Their time together might be running out, and Lisa felt it more than ever. "I promised you that you would come home with me, and I will keep that promise," she whispered, gently stroking Bella's head. The days seemed to drag on, and Bella's health continued to teeter on a fine line between improvement and relapse. Then one morning, Lisa received a call from the clinic. Dr. Wilson's voice sounded grave, and each word weighed heavily on Lisa's heart. "Bella had a relapse this morning. She is stable now, but we need to discuss options moving forward." Lisa's heart raced. She knew this moment was coming, but nothing could prepare her to hear those words. She rushed to the clinic, her mind in turmoil. When she arrived, Dr. Wilson greeted her with a somber expression. Bella was lying down, her eyes half open, breathing with difficulty. She looked exhausted. "We've reached a critical point. Bella has been a fighter, but her body is reaching its limits. We can continue treatment, but the suffering will be greater. Perhaps it's time to consider what is best for her." The doctor's words pierced Lisa like a blade. She knew he was right, but how could she give up now? After everything they had been through together, how could she let Bella go? I can't," she began to speak, but her voice faltered. Dr. Wilson nodded, understanding Lisa's pain. "I know this is difficult. She has already exceeded expectations, but perhaps the greatest demonstration of love is to let her rest." Those words echoed in Lisa's mind as she sat beside Bella. Looking at the little dog who had fought so hard to survive, she finally realized how tired Bella was. Her eyes, once bright with life and determination, now seemed cloudy with exhaustion. The battle they were waging was no longer about recovery, but about time. "I just wanted you to have more time with me, Bella," she whispered as tears began to fall. "I wish everything were different. I wish I could take you home and give you the life you deserve." Looking at Bella, who now rested in silence, Lisa felt the weight of that terrible decision approaching. And amidst the pain, something began to change. She couldn't let Bella suffer any longer. The love she felt for her was strong enough to allow her to go in peace, but first, there was something she still wanted to do. "Let me take her home, Dr. Wilson. Even if it's just for one day, I promised her that." Dr. Wilson looked at her with a mix of sadness and understanding. He knew how much that request meant to Lisa, and despite the circumstances, he couldn't refuse. By the end of that afternoon, Lisa wrapped Bella in a blanket and took her home. The journey felt endless, the emotional weight crushing her chest with each mile. Upon arriving, Lisa's small apartment had never seemed so welcoming. She arranged a comfortable bed for Bella in the living room next to the window, where the little dog could feel the warmth of the sun. "Welcome home, Bella." Bella opened her eyes for a brief moment, as if she understood those words. Lisa sat beside her, unable to look away. Hours passed and time seemed suspended. The silence that filled the space was not uncomfortable, but a kind of quiet farewell. That night, while Lisa stroked Bella's head, she felt the little dog's body relax completely. The breathing that had once been heavy was now soft, almost imperceptible. Lisa's heart raced, but at the same time she felt a deep calm. Bella was at peace. In the final moment, when the first ray of sunlight broke through the window, Bella slipped away. The first ray of sun crossed the window when Lisa felt Bella's body grow lighter in her arms. It was as if all the pain and suffering that had marked her short life vanished in that instant. Lisa's heart tightened, but at the same time, a sense of peace washed over her. Bella was finally free, and the last promise Lisa had made was fulfilled. She was home. Tears began to fall silently as Lisa stroked the soft fur of her little dog one last time. Throughout that journey, she had prepared for this moment, but even so, the pain was overwhelming. Losing Bella was not just the end of a battle against illness, it was the end of a deep connection, a bond that had formed amid chaos and suffering, now leaving behind an unbearable void. "Rest, my little one, you fought so hard," she murmured, her voice choked with tears. Sitting on the floor with Bella in her arms, Lisa let the tears fall freely. She didn't need to be strong in that moment. She didn't need to hide how much that farewell was tearing her apart. The apartment, which had once felt cozy, now seemed too big, too empty. The walls, the furniture, everything felt heavy, as if the weight of Bella's absence pressed down on all sides. She thought about all the moments they had shared, from their first meeting in the alley to the last weeks of struggle and hope. Every small victory, every breath Bella fought to take, every look that connected them. The life Bella had led before being found by Lisa was marked by abandonment and pain, but in her final moments she had experienced something different: love. And that was what Lisa held on to with all her strength, the fact that no matter how brief it was, Bella had known what it was like to be cared for, to be loved. Time passed slowly in that silent apartment. Lisa didn't move. She simply remained there with the little dog still beside her. There was no rush to let her go. Even though she knew that Bella was gone, she wasn't ready to release her. In some way, it felt as if, by holding Bella just a little longer, the bond between them remained, even if it was only a fleeting illusion. After a while, the phone rang. It was Dr. Wilson, concerned about the silence from Lisa since she had left the clinic. His firm, professional voice echoed from the other end of the line, but upon hearing Lisa's muffled sobs, he immediately understood what had happened. "Lisa, I'm so sorry," he said, his voice heavy with empathy. "She's gone?" Lisa nodded, even though he couldn't see her. She wiped her tears from her face, trying to regain some control over her voice. "Yes, she went peacefully, here at home." "Doctor." Wilson stayed silent for a few seconds, respecting the moment. When he spoke again, his voice was gentle, stripped of its usual formality. "You did everything you could for her. She knew she was loved, and that's the most important thing." His words made Lisa cry even more, but there was solace in them. She knew he was right. Despite all the pain, there was a peace in knowing that Bella hadn't left alone, nor without love. The little dog, once discarded and left to die, now rested in the arms of someone who loved her unconditionally. After hanging up the phone, Lisa looked again at Bella, still wrapped in the blanket. The sun was streaming through the window, filling the room with a soft light. She knew it was time to truly let her go. She placed the little dog on the makeshift bed she had made near the window, where Bella had spent her last moments. "Thank you for allowing me to be a part of your life, even if it was for such a short time," Lisa said, managing a weak smile as she stroked Bella's head one last time. When she finally stood up, the weight of absence felt unbearable. The house was empty, but Lisa knew it would never be the same after Bella. Something inside her had changed, and that feeling would remain. What began as a mission of rescue had transformed into something much larger. Bella had taught her about resilience, about love in its purest form, and Lisa would carry that forever. She picked up the phone and called Dr. Wilson. They arranged the next steps for saying goodbye to Bella, but Lisa knew that the true farewell had already happened. Bella, despite all the pain and suffering she had faced, was finally free. And somehow that brought a bit of comfort to Lisa's heart. That night, when silence once again enveloped the apartment, Lisa looked out the window at the starry sky and smiled, even with tears streaming down her face. Bella had been her greatest proof that love, even in the most challenging moments, could transform everything. In the days that followed Bella's departure, Lisa's apartment felt emptier than ever. The silence was constant, but not in a comfortable way. It was the kind of silence that screamed absence, echoing loss. Every corner brought a memory of Bella. The spot by the window, where she had spent her last moments. The little blankets Lisa always left scattered to ensure the dog stayed warm. Everything felt incomplete. Lisa still didn't know how to move on. It wasn't her first time dealing with the loss of a pet, but this time felt different. Bella hadn't just been a rescued dog. She represented something much larger. A struggle for life, for dignity, for love. And even though Lisa knew she had given Bella everything she could, the void left by her was profound. She spent days immersed in this silent grief, avoiding looking at the things that reminded her of Bella, yet unable to distance herself from them. It was a mix of pain and love, intertwined in a way she had never experienced before. But at some point, something changed. The pain began to transform. It wasn't less intense, but it became something more bearable, almost comforting. The love for Bella didn't vanish with her departure. It merely took on a different form, calmer, more serene. One morning, Lisa decided to do something she had been postponing. She returned to Bright Paw Animal Clinic, the same clinic that had been the backdrop for so many moments of uncertainty, fear, and at the same time, hope. Upon entering, the familiar air of the reception and the muffled sounds of conversations among veterinarians made her feel strangely at peace. The place carried memories, but now those memories didn't overwhelm her. They were part of the journey. Dr. Wilson welcomed her with a gentle smile, clearly aware of what Lisa was going through. He understood the impact Bella had left. As they sat down to talk, Lisa felt the need to express something she had been holding inside. "I still feel her presence. It's as if in some way she's still with me. I know that might sound strange, but that's how I feel," Lisa said, looking at the doctor with eyes full of emotion. Dr. Wilson listened attentively, his face serious but understanding. "There's nothing strange about that. The bond you created goes far beyond physical presence. Bella lives in everything you shared with her, in every gesture, in every choice you made to care for her." Lisa nodded, feeling comfort in his words. The silence between them was not uncomfortable. It was a silence of understanding, of acceptance. As she left the clinic, Lisa knew she was beginning to understand what she needed to do to honor Bella's memory. Instead of avoiding the memories, she decided to embrace them. The blankets that had covered Bella were still there, and Lisa left them spread out as a symbol of the life that had passed through there. But there was something more. Bella's presence inspired her to keep helping. She began visiting the clinic more often, offering her time to help other animals in recovery, animals that, like Bella, had their own struggles, their own stories of abandonment and overcoming. It was during one of these visits that something unexpected happened. A litter of puppies had arrived at the clinic, rescued from terrible conditions. Among them, one small puppy with scruffy fur and sad eyes caught Lisa's attention. He was curled up in a corner, separated from the others, as if he still didn't trust the world around him. She approached slowly, extending her hand. The puppy hesitated for a moment, but then, to Lisa's surprise, he came closer, gently resting his head in her palm. "You remind me a little of her," Lisa whispered, feeling a wave of emotion. She knew this puppy was not a replacement for Bella. Nothing could fill the space that Bella had left. But there was something there, something familiar yet new, a new chance, a new beginning. The cycle didn't repeat. It transformed. Lisa was not erasing what she had lived with Bella. On the contrary, she was using that experience as a way to move forward, to keep helping, to give love to those in need just as she had done for Bella. As she took the puppy home, Lisa felt something different. The emptiness was still there, but now it was filled with memories of Bella and the possibility of new memories, new journeys. And just as she had promised Bella, Lisa would continue to be a safe harbor for those who needed it. The pain of loss would never completely vanish,